Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. We're here live today at Charlie's Collectible Show for the Lorcana 8K. Really excited to be here today in going into round 3. How's it going so far, Jebas?
It's going well. We're going to be watching a different match this time, not just Kendall all day, every day. Maybe later, but we'll check on him after a bit. We're going into, I believe that they've already started, so why don't we go ahead and jump over there.
Really excited to be here. I know that Toops, one of our friends of the 20 Lore Pro community, is playing. Here he is with his Amethyst Steel list versus Scott, piloting a Sapphire Steel list. This should be an interesting matchup.
So it looks like Sapphire Steel was on the play here. I believe, do we have them backwards on the visual here?
I believe we do. We'll get that fixed in just a moment.
Okay, so then it would be Toupaloop on the left here, which makes more sense given that we've got a Piglet out. So it looks like the Amber Steel was on the play, running out Piglet on 2.
Now, Piglet, very strong card when you have more characters on the board. When it's left by itself like it is right now, not that great at questing, although Amber Steel plays a lot of 1-drops from Cinderella to Daisy, cards that can really just, you could double play within a turn.
Alright, Blue Steel runs out one of the better 2-drops in Steel that's come out of this most recent set here in Calhoun, which is a very strong anti-aggression card. Given that it has both resist, making the 3/2 body much more respectable, and then whenever it challenges and banishes another character, you actually gain 2 lore as well. So they decided to commit to gaining the 3 lore out of the Piglet, which I think is probably the right call here. Not much that we can do about the Calhoun in this spot anyway. It is going to get its value at some point, no matter what. We may as well collect some extra lore out of the deal.
And goodness, there's another Piglet and Daisy. 2 great characters on Toupaloop's side of the board. Great questers here, although can be picked up by this Calhoun. I believe that's a Force Sphere as well on Scott's side of the board there at the bottom left. Playing the new Azaret C. This card has been seeing a lot of play alongside Tipo in the sense that it can take a card from your hand, put it in your inkwell, allow you to draw a card, replaces the card that you put in your inkwell.
And just a reminder, we are getting the display up at the top flipped over here. So it is Amber Steel on the left side here, with Toupaloop, and Scott is on the right side of the screen with the Sapphire Steel. Alright, so running out a little bit of ramp here, doing what we assumed, which is the Calhoun takes out the Piglet. Gains 2 lore, which is nice, but not nearly as necessary as just pulling it off the board. And then running out that Captain Hook here. Now, unfortunately, leaving the other Piglet in play, so I'm going to be able to collect some additional lore off those Piglets, requiring that, of course, there are 2 other characters in play to get that bonus lore. But we do have a lot of ability as the Sapphire Steel player to catch up here. A lot of challenging power on the board. So we'll see how the next couple of turns go. The early few turns, especially on the play, are sort of the most critical for an aggro deck. Alright, we got Toupaloop versus Toupaloop. Perfect. Alright, that should be accurate here once the current lore totals get swapped over.
We had a little bit of a camera situation during the first 2 rounds, was able to swap out cameras here, so we'll have this fixed in the upcoming rounds. Appreciate y'all staying up with us so far. Toupaloop here playing this aggressive Amber Steel list. really trying to get in early with the questers, but this Calhoun, I mean, that is a problem to face when you have characters that are easily taken out by it. In addition to just having resist, I mean, this card is strong.
Yeah, it's not only very strong at challenging, but the fact that it has, similar to the 5-cost Robin Hood, that trigger where you actually are gaining lore when you're challenging is very nice. So we're seeing kind of an interesting decision here from Toupaloop to draw 3 cards with this Rapunzel by just using Daisy Duck to challenge Calhoun, deal no damage because of the resist, just take 3 damage, and then have that Rapunzel removed all immediately just to draw 3 cards.
That's something that we've seen with cards like Nala, 1-drop 0/4, using the 0/4 to challenge into something just because it'll survive, and then giving you the ability to draw with Rapunzel, really gain some card resources while also trying to find outs for cards on your opponent's side of the board. Here's a Flavor Sham, was able to pop the Force Sphere, allowing him to draw 2 cards on his turn.
The ink here, considering inking the Sailing the Azurite Sea, looks like they do decide to do that here, playing out another Captain Hook, so a lot of challenge pressure coming down to be able to sort of bully these smaller characters.
Now, funny enough, I was talking to Scott just before the feature match started, and he mentioned that in the previous 2 rounds of the tournament, he played Amber Steel. So this is his 3rd Amber Steel matchup. In this case, we can see why he made it here to round 2, or round 3 with 2-0.
Yeah, that explains the undefeated up to this point. Pretty expensive hand from our Amber Steel deck, which is a bit of a downside given that we're pretty short on resources, so being able to double or triple spell in a few turns here would be very nice. Not having access to that, it looks like there's quite a few Pete's in hand and a few songs, so that sort of combination of just a lot of 3-drops is limiting our ability a little bit. Alright, so deciding to finally take out the Calhoun using the Let the Storm Rage on here, which is not that surprising, though we did commit our Rapunzel into doing it to sing it. That'll give us the ability to actually maybe double spell, even potentially triple spell this turn, play perhaps one of our 3-drops plus a Calhoun. Could allow us to keep putting some pressure on the board while keeping our opponent from being able to continually remove what we're doing.
Goodness, Scott here already up to 9 ink in his inkwell. I mean, that's a lot of ink to be able to play anything he needs to or wants to.
Alright, another Storm, this time to take out the 2nd Captain Hook, and a Calhoun of our own, so that does put some pressure actually on the Flaversham. Now if we have the ability to put a little bit of damage on Flaversham, we can take it out with the Calhoun, gain some lore. Calhoun doesn't take any extra damage because of the resist. And it makes the ability to draw additional cards here a little bit more of a liability than I think it would normally be against decks like this.
Let's take a quick look over at our feature match 2 with Kindle. We'll see how they're doing over there. Here's No I'm Not, Kindle, piloting a Ruby Amethyst deck just like he's known for, and we've seen him in round 2, we got to watch him, versus the King, piloting a Ruby Sapphire list, 2-0 as well. There's 2 Fishbone Quills, an Ice Block with a Tipo, lots of ink in his inkwell. Fox doing what Fox does, singing friends on the other side. And we're seeing a back and forth here of the resource game between these two. All those cards in the King's banish pile, we see Grammatala Sisu, just so many things over there that looks like No Amount was fighting against.
Bit of a slugfest on this one. We'll check back in with them after a bit here.
Here we are back in round 3, match 1, Toupaloop versus Scott. There's a Tinkerbell on the board, did 1 damage. Of course, Calhoun having that resist 1, not taking any.
So the Flaversham does remain untapped. Looks like they didn't have any items. They just commit straight to Tinkerbell. Nothing else. See a Kita come down, which makes our characters a little bit safer here against that Tinkerbell. Puts Tinkerbell down to 1 strength overall. We will adjust the lore here. We see that as well. Probably a symptom of us flipping the 2 screens. So we'll take care of that. So in this case, the Amber Steel is at 13 versus Blue Steel at 2 currently. Now, this is a pretty precarious position. If they've got something like... maybe Gathering Swords to just deal a little bit of extra damage. Flip them again. Well, we'll figure out our camera issues here. Just bear with us. While we do this, let's go ahead and jump back over to our match 2 with Kendall. See that bit of a slugfest here. Still sort of just back and forth on this one. A couple of crabs have come and gone. Lots of items in play. And not really a huge amount of lore from either side, it seems like. Looks like that's maybe the second crab that's bit the dust here. And maybe, what, 8-10 cards in hand? Yeah, this match is going nowhere fast, I would say. Alright, I will check and see if our first match has been fixed here. Okay, it looks like that one should be squared away here, so we will fully switch over to that one. Alright. So, sorry about that, we are back. We have fixed the top score here. Not a whole lot has changed on the board. So we are just back to the spot where we were at, where we had played the Kita, and now the Sapphire Steel is trying to figure out what the solution is going to be at this point. So it looks like we're directly shooting the Daisy Duck for 2, and then using the Tinkerbell's 1 damage to then figure out where that 2 damage is going off of the Tinkerbell. It's like maybe over to the Kita. Alright, so Kita takes 2. And runs out of Beast, Tragic Hero. Singing Strength for 3 to take out the Kita. Okay. A respectable way of sort of clawing back a little bit of the board. You can see that the Kita was pretty impressive at limiting Tinkerbell's ability to sort of bully what was going on over here. Still quite a bit of lore pressure on board for being at 13 still.
We want to thank everyone again just for your patience as we were able to fix the camera. We have an app that runs with the overlay, able to get that fixed for your viewing pleasure. As well, we have our Community Pro, aka Kindle, known as No I'm Not. He is in our feature match 2, and all of his rounds will be available on YouTube to watch after the tournament. We'll watch feature match 1 during the majority and then have Kindle's matches available all on YouTube later on next week as our Community Pro member. We will update y'all on how he is doing all throughout the tournament. Excited to see how our 20 Lore Pro does in today's tournament.
Alright, Ink's a Pete. Would not surprise me to see a Pete come down to sort of protect the board a little bit. I believe that they had 2 in hand.
And there is a second Calhoun from Toupaloop. We're starting to see the challenging match kind of flip here from Scott to Toupaloop.
Alright, so both the Pete and the Calhoun came out of hand, with the final card in hand being Doc, which actually allows us to discard our entire hand, and then draw 2 cards. Well, we didn't have any cards left in our hand, so it's just a draw 2. Very good here. It's going to be a tough battle from this point with Pete down, so no ability to play any actions, and an awful lot of characters on board from our Amber Steel player here.
Yeah, just look at the questing power on Toupaloop's side of the board. I mean, we have the Rapunzel, we have the 2 Calhouns, the Doc, the Pete. I mean, he's got a lot of characters to quest, but also able to gain lore if they need to challenge in and are able to banish something. Scott, though, is drawing an extra card each turn with that Beast Tragic Hero.
I believe that there was another Doc drawn as well, so quite a lot of additional cards. Even if this does get cleaned up, there's a pretty big follow-up.
That was, I would say this match so far has been pretty interesting. I mean, we saw Toupaloop go from this kind of aggro amber cards into now this kind of almost mid-rangey protective shell here with the Pete, able to prevent any action to be played during the turns played, as well as these other characters that now are pretty strong with the resist 1.
And so Tinkerbell taking out Rapunzel, figuring out where this 2 damage is going to go. So the Calhouns, given that they have resist, are protected. Doc's a 1/3, Pete's a 3/3. This Tinkerbell kind of looks a little bit embarrassing here. Beast can take out a Calhoun, okay. Slows it down, a little bit more pressure here.
Again, we want to thank Charlie's Collectible Show for hosting today's Lorcana tournament. There's over 218 players at today's tournament, making it more than an 8K. Really excited to see the turnout for today's tournament and kind of to see the biggest tournament kind of right off the bat from the EU Continentals to kind of see how we're going to have the meta transform going into the NA Continentals.
This is an interesting line from Scott here, dropping Manor, clearing up as much as they can as far as the Amber Steel board, and then playing a location to hopefully try and close out the game. But given that they really haven't been able to quest at all, it's going to be an uphill battle. Even if we just sort of quest out every turn, that may be enough to actually win this fight. Alright, using Calhoun to gain 2 by taking out the Beast. Goes up to 17, 18, 19 perhaps?
I believe we saw the Doc in hand from the last turn, like you were saying, Jebas. So if he's able to play out multiple cards and then play the Doc, he can refresh his hand.
Ink's a happy. Plays Smee into Doc, draws 2 cards. Plays a Pluto.
Oh my goodness.
Pluto being another new card from the set that's started to see a little bit of play. It is a 0/5, a 1/5 rather, that has bodyguard, and if it has no damage, it's actually +4 strength, so it becomes a 5/5. For 4, a 5/5 bodyguard is enormous, protecting this board quite well. Our best case scenario is we maybe challenge it with Flaversham and then Tinkerbell it to maybe take out 2 things. I mean, then we still have 4 other characters that are problematic. Yeah, you just scooping it up. That's a good blocker on this board of 5 characters, especially when we only need 1 of them to live to be able to close it out here.
That's just really impressive to see, just the power of Pluto to protect everything, but also this match really showing why Doc is such a strong character right now. Just the times where Toupaloop was able to play out his whole hand, then finished off with a Doc to draw more and play more. Such a strong play from Toupaloop.
Alright, while they shuffle up, we'll go pop back in and check on Kendall here. We'll see if that crazy board that we popped into a few times while we were resolving our cameo she's ever resolved. It looks like it did end up finishing up on the other side. We'll have to see. Looks like it was Kendall that took that one down, so the red-purple being able to close it out probably with something like goats, or even just going a little bit too wide for blue-red to handle, taking out the double crabs and that kind of deal. So
and those matchups can be pretty tough and long. I mean, you just see the back and forth of the power levels between the 2 decks as they continue to kind of slog against each other. I mean, when we had gone over to this match earlier, we saw his banish pile, and it was full of strong characters.
Yeah, generally it starts out where you're sort of posturing for, do we have an aggro plan early, and then by the time that we get to sort of the later stages of the game, it becomes sort of a control battle. And if the Ruby Amethyst player has been able to gain enough lore up until that point, generally they can close it out pretty well with goats. However, if they didn't get to that point and they're kind of low on lore, it can be hard to close it out.
Let's head on back over to our feature match 1 with Toupaloop. We'll see how those 2 are doing over there. Toupaloop versus Scott.
It's like they're just resolving their adjustments at the start of the game here, get their hands sorted, and then we'll have Scott likely start it off. Looks like a pretty good hand from Scott here. An early popsicle into some ramp on 2 is generally what you would like to see. Interestingly, Ink's a popsicle opting to play the Fortisphere.
Yeah, just with the type of matchup that we saw last time, the Fortisphere, honestly, being able to give something bodyguard later on if you're not going to use it on a Flaversham, not a bad choice in this matchup.
We'll have to see if that comes up at all. Daisy as an opener from Toupaloop is exactly what you want on turn 1. Pretty well every game, I would say, in a deck like this. Certainly one of the most aggressive plays, and it plays okay into Calhoun, given that it can't be as easily taken out. It still can be, certainly, but Calhoun being one of the most defensive cards, I would say that that Sapphire Steel has been able to present recently. And you can tell that the card is very good when the slightly more aggressive deck and the slightly more defensive deck are both playing the same card. You know it's probably a pretty good one.
It just goes to show, really, too, like you were saying, I mean, gaining 2 lore off of a challenge, I mean, you're going to gain not only banishing a character, but also the resist that much stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Here's a Mr. Smee, able to also quest for 2 itself. Mr. Smee, we do know that Toupaloop is playing the Piglet, so he does have a captain that would allow Mr. Smee to not have any damage. A great challenger into Calhoun, but also being challenged by Calhoun, because it does have enough power in order to take it out.
So, given that this is best of 3, I just wanted to point out, up at the top here, we do actually have the markers for if a player is up a game or not. So, since we're playing to the first person to win 2 games, which is a best of 3, we see that Toupaloop now has the first green marker, so that indicates that they have won the first game. So, in case anybody is curious where we're at, we have our lore counter here, we have our indicator of whether a game has been won, and then the colors that we're playing here. And then our current record for who we're watching is also up there, so just for a note for everybody that's watching.
This Mr. Smee, we'll see if he's got a follow-up play of Piglet. Toupaloop shuffling his hand. I don't think I saw Piglet. That's okay, though, because even with Mr. Smee having 1 damage, not too bad in this case. Again, we want to thank everyone again for being here as we are with 20 Lore Pro at Charlie's Collectible Show here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. We want to thank Charlie and the whole crew as they are hosting today's tournament. We have over 215 players here today. Really excited to see how today's tournament plays out, as tomorrow on Sunday we will be going to top 8. We'll be live tomorrow morning for the top 8 coverage.
Alright, so we started out with Sail to draw a card, and it allows us to play second ink this turn. They then decide to shoot the Daisy so that the Calhoun can actually take it out, which makes sense to me. They're going to gain 2 lore out of the deal. And then they also get to play another ink if they want. They don't have to. Looks like they have another Calhoun in hand, which obviously can't be inked. So it sort of depends on the texture of their hand. Looks like they had maybe a couple of strengths. So they decide to ink one of them, play out a captain, take out the Daisy, gain the 2 lore. And it puts them in a pretty good position here. Calhoun, again, just bullying these early characters. The resist 1, they take no damage, they still gain 2 lore. It allows them to be able to challenge the Smee now that we both have the Calhoun and the Captain Hook at this point, too.
This Captain Hook, too, a great challenger. I mean, it's got Challenger 2, able to take out the Mr. Smee if Toupaloop decides to use it without having a bodyguard in play. Captain Hook, I mean, really just a great card from set 1.
So I do see a Raging Storm here in hand, which can take out the Captain Hook, which would then force the Calhoun to trade with the Smee if they want to get rid of it. Would allow us to still quest for 2, but Calhoun being able to gain 2 lore when it challenges something and takes it out is kind of problematic. Like, they're staying on pace with the aggro deck, which is generally not where you want to be. Sort of the play draw disparity here makes sense. So a Smee gets inked, and they decide to just run out a Lawrence, which sort of is the biggest thing on the board now. Lawrence being a 0/4, that as long as it has no damage, gets 4 additional strength. So similar to Pluto, a little bit cheaper, but it does not have bodyguard. So Lawrence is absolutely the biggest thing on the field right now.
Not a bad Rapunzel target either, because he can challenge in, and we know he has a Rapunzel in hand. Challenges, able to take some damage, and then he'll draw however much he takes.
Up to 5 ink, though. Runs out a Beast, Tragic Hero. So we're getting to the point in the game where being on the play and being able to ramp a little bit with the Sail really starts to take effect. That turn 4 from going 3 lore directly into 5 is very, very powerful out of the blue steel deck. Now the Beast makes the Lawrence a little trickier, given that there's just an additional large character on the field.
Uses Lawrence to sing Storm, Rage on that Beast, not allowing Scott to have any additional card draw off of it.
So now the Beast is going to be a +4, so it'll be a 7/5 for next turn, which is able to take out basically anything. It would end up trading with the Lawrence. However, if we take any of these other characters, attack them into Lawrence first, Then we can have the Calhoun potentially take it out. So the Hook and the Calhoun can combine together to maybe take out the Lawrence. So there's still a lot of pressure available, and something like a Tinkerbell can be really devastating on this turn here. Tinkerbell can actually make both the Pluto and the Lawrence not really have much combat power. The Beast can take out the Pluto, the Calhoun could take out the Lawrence, and then the Hook could take out the Smee. That might be a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, this Beast, if it's just able, like you're saying here, to just challenge into this Pluto, take this out, you could use the Captain Hook even. It might trade into it, but using that Calhoun to gain some type of lore for yourself, just trying to clear up his board as best you can, that could do quite a bit of work for Scott on this turn.
Yeah, even without the Tinkerbell, but a Tinkerbell would be an absolute disaster here. Looks like they don't have one, but I do see a Cogsworth, which could also be pretty good in this spot, because it could allow Calhoun actually to take out the Smee without getting banished itself, because it would have 2 resist on it. So you could have the Beast take out the Pluto, the Calhoun come down here, and then basically you would be faced with Calhoun plus Hook on just the Lawrence alone, which might be a little bit more manageable. Kind of looks like that's what Scott is considering here before making any plays. Trying to do the combat math on, does that make sense to, you know, lose this Beast to kind of trade with that Pluto or not?
We want to thank everyone again here for coming and watching today's tournament. If you missed any of today's rounds, you can head on over to 20lore.pro after today's tournament and watch them either on YouTube or Twitch. The VOD will be posted there for you to watch, and we will have edited editions of these tournament rounds later on this week for your viewing pleasure. We want to thank Kindle, aka No I'm Not, for being our community pro. His matches are being recorded all day long, as he is the feature match 2, and we will have those posted with commentary later on this week.
Alright, decides to lead out with a Calhoun here. So it's probably Calhoun plus Strength, given that that's what we've got left in hand. So Strength being able to deal 4. So that would be either taking out the Lawrence, which makes sense, or the Pluto here. So taking out the Lawrence, we deal 3 damage to Pluto, and then have Calhoun just eliminate it. Pluto losing the 4 strength because it has damage on it, and then the resist from Calhoun means that it takes nothing. And then now we just have Smee with 1 damage left versus 2 Calhouns and a Beast that is big mad. So I would imagine we're just going to quest or pass. Looks like just pass.
Has left Toupaloop really needing to find a way to reestablish that board state. We see a Kita in hand. That could be an interesting kind of way to come back in the shifting of trying to challenge out to your opponent instead of you taking all the brunt of those challenges. Kita just really being quite a strong card whenever it does hit the board. Able to give characters -3 until the end of the turn. The next turn.
This is another example of the play draw being a bit of a problem sometimes, where Kita on the play here might have been really powerful, but on the draw, since we're so far behind, you know, facing down the double Calhoun, the Smee, you know, we just don't have a large board presence, and the Beast is still able to really punch through that -3, given that it still has 4 strength. So yes, it does allow us to run out a pretty sizable body in the 3/5, but the Beast is still able to pretty well eat any one of our characters that are turned sideways here. Bit of a problem. It wouldn't surprise me if we see just Rapunzel draw a card in this spot. Not an awesome position, I would say. These Calhouns are kind of bullying all these little characters a little more than what we would like. Yeah, we're just drawing a card with Rapunzel here, and likely just going to pass it back. Maybe inking something that's not super useful right now, just so we can potentially double spell. But it wouldn't be surprised me if we just say go, so that we can try to keep all the cards that we have that we're working with.
Yeah, that beast, just like you were saying, Jebas, although not drawing Scott cards is representing a huge challenger. It's making just all the decisions that Toupaloop is trying to make that much harder with this huge challenger on the board.
Alright, so we do end up making a Pete, which in this spot is okay, but not super important. On a second beast, this one's going to be able to start drawing cards pretty quickly here. This is a rough spot. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually just quest out here. Just a pass. Okay, a little bit more passive. Possibly trying to play around a second Rapunzel. This is a pretty good shout. Both players on 5 ink, but the Sapphire Steel player likely going to start going up quite a bit more if this beast is drawing extra cards.
Gosh, yeah, another strength or Storm Rage on. There it goes on the beast, just like it did last time.
Alright, 2 damage. So no extra card draw, but now we have 2 Mad Beasts. At this point, with extra damage on them. Well, Tragic Heroes that are a little bit upset.
Here's a Pluto, still, again, gets taken out by these beasts.
Interestingly, the way that the Kita triggers work, like the Pluto can be really strong here, but I'm not even sure if Pluto's super great in this spot. It does protect the Rapunzel from just getting eaten for free, but it's going to be a little rough here. We know that our Sapphire Steel player has a Cogsworth in hand. Looks like a Cogsworth and now a location. So the McDuck Manor there to start putting some lore pressure. I would not be surprised if we just play the Cogsworth and then bully this board. We could even just trade one of these beasts with the Pluto and then use the other beast to just take out the Rapunzel, or even both Calhouns to gain 2 lore.
Oh, I like the idea of a both Calhoun play. They have resist 1, just taking nothing from Rapunzel.
At this point, they have resist 2 even from the Cogsworth. I'm surprised that we decided to do this, unless the play is that we're just not going to quest the Calhouns. So giving up 2 lore here with this, with the way that they decided to attack, maybe didn't see the line.
Scott still in a great position, though. Really has a great board state against Toupaloop.
Yeah, this is going to be a hard road to climb back from, especially with a hand that is just a bunch of Kitas. Kita's really great when you're a bit ahead, or kind of board even parity, but when we're so far behind on board, the Kita just really doesn't do anything. And I don't really feel like we have any answers to this Cogsworth at all out of the... I mean, really, most Amber Steel decks don't have great answers to Cogsworth anyway, because it makes all of the removal spells pretty rough, pretty non-useful, I would say. So this one, I think, is slipping away from the aggro line.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Jebas. I think Cogsworth, especially right now here in this board state, is just really going to mess up anything Toupaloop is trying to do.
We get a Happy. Alright. Happy is a nice dwarf that costs 1 and is able to challenge evasives. However, not the most impressive card on this board state.
Well, I was just thinking, with all of these dwarfs, that we may see the location 7 Dwarves Mine. could start seeing maybe some of them get moved to this location to try to shoot down stuff. But even with the resist too, it's a tough state to be in.
It would appear that there was a sequencing mistake. Forgetting about the resist, or forgetting that once the character's dead, that we no longer deal as much damage with strength. I don't believe that it really matters a ton in this game, given that the board is so insurmountable from the other player's side. But yeah, I believe that was a mistake, which leaves the beast in play.
On our match 2, we're just looking at a little preview here. It is currently 1-1. No, I'm not to the king. So they're going to go into game 3. They're still shuffling up, so we won't quite switch over there yet.
Alright, getting in some questing. Surprised that they don't just quest in with the beast. Like, for my money, I don't really care that much if the beast gets killed. Banished in this case, given that we have so many other characters on the board putting on this pressure. So they decide to play Akita here, which means that this beast likely can quest.
Yeah, it gives all characters, not just your opponents. So that means that yours and your opponents are going to be at the -3 to the end of your next turn. Still have the resist 1 from the Cogsworth.
Yeah. Okay, so we take out the happy here. Decide to play a hook. So have been having some pretty mediocre draws, but I think that there's enough things on board that we can kind of just quest out here with whatever we got and close out the game in 2 turns here. Yeah, they're just scooping it up.
I think once you see the board state, I mean, Scott here going to the second row to try to fit the cards in, it really kind of spells kind of what's going to happen for the rest of that game. We're looking at round 3 here. Scott versus Toupaloop, 1-1. They are going to be going into game 3 here in round 3. We know that over here in game 2, it looks like they were able to finish that match.
Assuming that the lore totals are correct here, my assumption is that Kendall took that one down.
Making him 3-0. The king now 2-1. Congratulations to Kendall on his round 3 victory.
I'm going to have to tell him to play a little slower so that we can catch some of those games.
And he is our community pro. We may not watch all of his games on stream, but they will be all available to you on our YouTube, 20 Lore Pro YouTube, later on this week with commentary. So if we're not able to watch all today, we're at least going to keep you up to date, and then you can watch it later on this week. We have a quick break here as the players are shuffling up. We just want to thank some of our partners for today's stream. We want to thank, of course, Charlie's Collectible Show for hosting today's 8K Lorcana tournament featuring over 215 players, 218 in total. We want to thank all the players who came out today and for everyone who's playing here on the feature match. Thank you, the viewers at home, for joining us here today live. We are offering the stream coverage and announcer commentary in several different languages to include Chinese, German, French, English. If you speak a different language and you would like to view or listen to the commentary in that language, all of those are in the description below. We want to thank GFQ Underground for printing today's playmats that you see right before you on the screen. They are such a beautiful artwork and playmat. They really did a great job. If you have a custom artwork that you would like to have printed on a playmat, head on over to gfqunderground.com. Now, that custom artwork that you're seeing, the beautiful artwork itself, that was made by Diamond Ink Apparel. If you have a custom artwork idea or a need for your team or for your store, you can head on over to diamondinkapparel.com, where Miguel Angel is the artist who made these wonderful mats from scratch. Thank you so much, Diamond Ink Apparel and Miguel, for making this amazing artwork for today's top 4 players.
All right, so a pretty good start from Amber Steel here. Daisy Duck turn 1 is basically what you want to be doing. It looks like they got a Captain Hook off the Daisy trigger. And the Sapphire Steel player just ran out, your standard turn 1 cantrip item in Fortisphere. And then now we're gaining our 2 lore. So we'll see what our second turn worth of 2 ink gets us. The more aggressive that the draw, the worse it is probably for the Sapphire Steel player, because it just means that their potential Calhoun or their potential Smee on turn 2 needs to do a lot more heavy lifting. And it looks like it is... Yeah, they were considering debating between a Smee or a Piglet. This is likely trying to play around a fire the cannons a little bit. But we've got a Smee here, and the Calhoun is the turn 2 play for the Sapphire Steel. So this is why Daisy Duck is such a powerful turn 1 play. Daisy Duck does not worry too much about Calhoun, at least in the first couple of turns. You can kind of just quest with impunity and get in there.
Yeah, the Mr. Smee here, it can trade with Calhoun, and so he was debating about playing that Piglet on turn 2. Turns out that was a great decision to go with Mr. Smee instead, at least for right here.
Now, I would suspect a 1-drop plus Piglet to keep the damage off of Smee, but with the Calhoun it doesn't really matter, so we're just going to play a bigger character in Lawrence. Lawrence being a 4/4, we can kind of just put the pressure on and turn our characters sideways every turn and really get the lore counts higher to make it a little bit more difficult for Sapphire Steel to recover from this. The way that we generally will lose the game as the aggressive player is you just don't put enough pressure on before they can get to some of their bigger things, really. Just the Tinkerbells, the beasts, grab your swords if they're running it. Those are the kind of things that really dig them out of this hole, and if we can get enough lore in before they can start playing them, you can make them low enough tempo that they just can't catch up before the game is over. That's the goal, anyway. We'll see how that works out.
Well, Toupaloop are really doing a great job here of representing these 2 questing characters. I mean, having them out here and being able to just quest for 2 every single time, he's trying to take advantage of these early turns before Scott can get to that point. We'll see how far Toupaloop can get to where eventually he's able to just have enough cards in hand to hopefully at the end of the game have the steam he needs to continue this aggro 2 questing. There's that trade here with Calhoun into Mr. Smee. The only card available for Calhoun to be able to take out.
And then a Pete. Well, Pete being a 3/3 is basically all that it does in this matchup most of the time. Not a particularly exciting card here. We're going to go up to 10. Does not look like we found another character, and we're just going to get a Calhoun and probably send it back. It looks like they didn't have another Inkable to potentially play a second one, or they're just holding the cards just to develop more characters. This makes it so that if there's the ability to challenge something but keep the Pete alive, it's maybe just worse than Pete being banished, because the Calhoun's going to be able to challenge into it and just gain 2 lore, which puts even more pressure. We're already at 10. This is only going into turn 4, so this as a run out is basically exactly what you're hoping for out of this aggro deck. Really just playing some of the largest statted characters that you can every turn, and basically all of them gain 2 lore. So.
Yeah, this is shaping up for a quick aggro play by Toupaloop, and we're really going to have to see kind of how Scott is able to maneuver around this, trying to just either represent characters on the board that can quest or challenge. I mean, like Mr. Smee here, great challenger. Another Calhoun.
Alright, so just putting bodies on the board to challenge back, which makes sense, but I don't know if it's going to be fast enough. In this case, the Pete can't stop anything. So as a 3/3 body, it was essentially a do nothing, and it literally does nothing this turn. So we're still representing another 5 lore gain on the board. That's going to be problematic. I mean, going up to 15, even if you're able to clear up those characters on the board, the best that we can hope for is maybe a Swords, but we've got a Rapunzel on the other hand. Like, this is not looking good for Sapphire Steel here. This deck on the play is a very aggressive a very aggressive go wide kind of deck that all of the characters just have huge bodies, and it makes even the best anti-aggression cards in things like Calhoun and Smee just maybe not cut it.
Which is interesting to see, because I mean, he's having the bodies to like challenge in well, but just the drawing power, right? Like, if he's able to even have one character survive, he can heal it with Rapunzel, draw those cards, and have multiple characters to play in one turn. It's a tough situation to be in.
Alright, so Happy looks like it got inked here. Running out another Calhoun. There's a Calhoun off here. I suspect just gain 5. I mean, we could even potentially just not quest with the Calhouns.
Just so you get you get another lore.
Yeah, we just go ahead and gain the 4, go to 14, and then leave both of the Calhouns back to, challenge back, because they don't really have great. They don't have great challenges into Lawrence and Daisy here. What are they going to do? All of them have to double challenge to kill either of them.
And it won't die to Swords. They will die to Strengths.
Strength is a good card here, and that is a follow-up that Pete is able to do. You know, from a few turns earlier, Pete's looked a little, I don't know, disappointing, I suppose. But in this exact instance, it is able to sing that strength, and maybe is enough to carry us out of this a little bit. This is a spot where the Tragic Beast looks a little sad. Given that we're behind, it doesn't really catch us up at all. And Lawrence is really demonstrating why it's a great card. Just being a 4/4 for 3 that quests for 2 is such a beating in this spot. Wow, so we are just running out the Tragic Beast. I suppose if that's all that we have as far as a character, that makes sense. We're able to take out the Lawrence and then double challenge the Daisy to take that out, which is kind of the best that they can do. Removes as much as they possibly can, but these Calhouns are going to be able to challenge and bring us up to, what, 18 already?
Now, did I miss this? Did Lawrence have any damage on it, or was that Pete supposed to be banished along with the Lawrence?
The Pete sang Strength.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Pete sang Strength.
Yeah,
the Smee challenged in, and I think what we're going to see here is maybe drawing a card with Rapunzel. I don't know, we're not going to be able to draw a card with Rapunzel because all of them trade directly. So we're going to have to decide, you know, honestly, I bet the best play here is weirdly just use both Calhouns to challenge and gain 4, and then just play Rapunzel straight up, because Blue Steel doesn't have a great answer to Rapunzel as a 1/5. And that might be enough just to close out the game on its own.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy, great play. We'll see if Toupaloop can see the line.
It is a very awkward line, because normally you don't want to just have Rapunzel as your thing, but I really feel like Rapunzel, just raw, is your best choice in this spot to make it. Blue Steel they don't have answers to it's maybe Let It Go in some small copies, sometimes Hades, maybe the blue one. But those are so rare. We'll have to see if he sees the line, because it is an unintuitive line.
And even then, even if you do go with that line and it doesn't quite work out. You'd still be at 18.
The alternative to that, I suppose, is using both Calhouns. You take out Calhoun and Pete, and then you maybe shoot the Smee with the Storm that's in hand. Or sorry, yeah, the Raging Storm, and then...
Okay, looks like he's going for the Storm play.
Could be Pete. I just don't feel like Pete is what we would want in this spot. Yeah, I think the most unintuitive line is weirdly the correct one, but I can see how it could pretty easily be missed. So we'll see what we end up going for, deciding where to put these Calhouns. Now it's almost always going to be correct to challenge with the Calhouns one way or another. Taking out Calhoun makes the most sense, so that goes up to 16. And then you almost certainly take out Pete over the Smee, given that our opponent on Sapphire Steel, Scott, does not have a lot of lore currently. So you may as well take out the slightly less healthy character in Pete. Especially because if Smee quests, it takes itself out if they don't have a Cogsworth.
I wonder if he's debating about Storm Raging on B. Sorry, I did not mean to cut you off, Jebas. This is...
Yeah, ends up finding the line that I was talking about here. And this is the situation where this is your problem now. You need to figure out the answer. You have exactly 2 draws to figure it out, and that's it. So that's that game, and that'll be the match.
Wow, what a great game 3 here in round 3 with Toupaloop versus Scott. Toupaloop, like you were saying, Jebas, was kind of able to represent, do you have the answer for this? And if not, I'm going to win. Really great call-outs and an amazing game from Toupaloop and Scott. We want to thank them again so much for being here on today's stream and for playing on the feature match. We are following Kindle, aka No I'm Not, all day long on the feature match 2. He did win his round 3, and we will have all of his matches from beginning to end for you to view on our YouTube later on this week. Again, we just want to thank everyone for coming out here today to Charlie's Collectible Show for their Lorcana 8K. Really excited to be here and to watch all of today's tournament rounds. It's been a great tournament so far. What do you think, Jebas?
Absolutely. We've seen some bit of slugfests. We've seen some interesting lines. I think Calhoun is just such a strong card from both an aggro perspective and even a more defensive. We saw it kind of from both sides. So I'm interested to see some more of that type of strategy see play. Genie is obviously very good, right? Out of set 6, it's an evasive that draws a card when it comes into play. Like, that's awesome. But we haven't really seen as many of the other set 6 cards really shine through. And the more and more that I see Calhoun in play, the more I'm convinced that card not only has legs, but it is maybe one of the better Steel 2-drops, period, so far. Smee obviously is probably the GOAT. Doc does draw 2 cards on it, probably pretty far up there too, but this Calhoun, the only downside on it is that it's uninkable, but maybe you don't even ever really want to ink it because it's just such a powerful card on its own. So, we'll keep an eye on it and see how that goes for the rest of the day.
It's had a lot of legwork, and it's doing quite a bit of challenging, gaining a lot of lore this tournament. We've seen it do a ton of work for our players here today in the tournament. Again, we want to thank y'all, the viewers at home, for joining us. We're here at Charlie's Collectible Show for the Lorcana 8K. We will be live tomorrow for the top 8 tomorrow morning, so be looking out for that. We're excited to offer that to you. And then following tomorrow's tournament for the top 8, we're going to have a 2K Lorcana tournament to show on the stream as well. So lots of Lorcana to play this weekend, lots to see as the meta continues to develop heading into the NA Continentals.
Yeah, and I believe that I heard that this turned from an 8K all the way up to a 10K because of the attendance.
Wow.
So, based on the previous one that was here and this one, I mean, the next one might even be an additional round if they break 256 players, I believe. That's the threshold where they get up to an entire extra round. That's crazy. You know, that's an absurd amount of Lorcana players for something that doesn't feed into you know, any other major events. This is sort of just a standalone, and it's in such an awesome space. It doesn't surprise me that people are willing to challenge or to travel to this. It really does feel like a con here, more than most smaller events or even mid-sized events that I've been to. You know, there's tons of booths to check out. There's even RCQs and other card events being run here as well. So this space is awesome, and it's such a cool tournament to show up to.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Charlie's right now hosting, like you were saying, the RCQ for Magic the Gathering Standard. He's got a Christmas toy drive going on upstairs in the event venue. There is so much happening here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. So for the next event, if y'all have a chance to come and to play, y'all should come and check it out. It is a great event to be a part of. Well, we want to thank y'all so much again for being here with us during the live stream. We're going to try to get some deck techs and interviews from the winners for y'all to view later on. But again, thank y'all so much for joining us. We are going to take a quick break as we're getting ready to go into round 4. So thank y'all so much again, and we will see y'all here in just a little bit.